going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of the Forgotten Race Review. We're taking a quick pause from our requests because, as some of us may know, the last hardcover book Paizo's putting out for Pathfinder 1st Edition, Planar Adventures, is upon us, and we've got 2 new races and a reprint. The next 3 weeks are all about them. Today, from Planar Adventures, we're talking about the Duskwalker. If you guys are liking what you're hearing, as always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you have any requests for this series, as always, throw them in the comments. Before we get underway, this episode of the Forgotten Race Review was brought to you in part by the Inn of Planar Crossroads, a fellow YouTube channel, without which this channel, frankly, would not exist. So, hey, go check them out, guys, and as always, Adam, Kane, Alex, Greg, Colin, Mal. Yeah, that's everybody, right? Yeah. Thank you guys so much for your support. Now let's dive in. In Pathfinder, Duskwalkers are tall, bipedal, gray-skinned beings with a connection to Pharasma's boneyard, the place where we all eventually end up when we die, to be judged by the goddess herself. They manifest directly on the material plane, incarnating from souls that have earned the honor of a second life. The souls that become Duskwalkers have often distinguished themselves in the eyes of psychopomps as guardians of the cycle of birth and death. Other than their gray skin, their physical features have some resemblance to those they held in their previous lives. As such, a typical Duskwalker looks mostly human, other than their unusual coloration. However, Duskwalkers whose ancestors belong to other races can manifest with characteristic features such as pointed ears, hairy feet, or even feathers, horns, scales, or tails, though they rarely manifest smaller or larger than a medium creature. The first Duskwalkers appeared as the result of a bargain between 2 powerful psychopomps. One made the case to allow certain souls whose actions help preserve and protect the cycle of souls, but whose lives have been cut short of what fate had decreed for them to reincarnate once before passing to their final judgment. After a long debate, they agreed, but imposed a strict limit on the number of Duskwalkers that can exist at one time. Whenever this limit has been reached, dead Duskwalkers cannot be restored to life. Most Duskwalkers accept this limitation. Some request that those mourning their deaths also celebrate the birth of a new Duskwalker in the near future. The length of time it takes for a new Duskwalker to be born when one dies varies, but rarely is more than a year. When a Duskwalker is born, they appear spontaneously in a sanctified place with a connection to death, most often a graveyard or temple. Duskwalkers do not experience infancy, instead beginning their lives with the appearance and facilities of a roughly 8-year-old human child. Those mysterious children always appear cloaked in simple white robes with a small satchel of food and water by their sides. Duskwalker children mature at a variable rate depending upon the support they receive. A child adopted into a nurturing family or taken into care at a temple matures at a rate similar to that of a human child, and develops a healthy balance between her appreciation for life and interest in death. While Duskwalker children almost always appear near settlements, the unusual circumstances of their creation sometimes leads them to be ostracized to the point where they are forced to fend for themselves. Duskwalker children who endure such circumstances reach physical and intellectual maturity rapidly, but they struggle socially and emotionally. Duskwalker naming conventions are varied. Many Duskwalkers prefer to select their own names shortly after they manifest. Those who have good relationships with their surrounding community choose names that follow the community's traditions, while isolated Duskwalkers make up their own conventions, naming themselves after their accomplishments or values, or even just selecting a string of syllables that sounds nice to them. The role of the Duskwalker has changed since the beginning of the Age of Lost Omens, when Eridan died and the prophecy failed. Prior to that time, only souls that were destined to perform roles that would serve the Boneyard's interest would be reincarnated as Duskwalkers. With prophecy in disarray, however, Duskwalkers began to shape their own fates. Some Duskwalkers receive occasional visitations or messages from psychopomps, those being a certain flavor of outsiders from the Boneyard, intended to steer them towards certain tasks, but they are under no obligation to follow this guidance. Still, because of their origins, most Duskwalkers have an innate respect for the cycles of birth and death. They tend to gravitate towards positions and occupations that allow them to protect this cycle, such as hunters of the undead, midwives, morticians, and priests. This race entirely 100% belongs to Paizo. This isn't one we're pulling from the history books. This isn't one we're pulling from some kind of backwoods mythology story. No, this is 100% them, and that's super cool to me. But now, let's get down to their character sheet, because of course their stats are going to vary very greatly depending on whether your Duskwalker came from something like a human or a dwarf, and also, again, whether or not they were loved as a child. As far as maximum age goes, it's hard to say. I'm going to go ahead and lump them in with the rest of the native outsiders, though. Let's use the Aasimar as an example, as it appeared back in the day before it was flavor eroded to come of age around the same time as a human. That, of course, being 250 plus 6 percentage dice worth of years. Now, to their sheet. A Duskwalker receives a +2 to its dexterity and wisdom, but a -2 to its con. They're agile and wise, but their bodies are fragile. Duskwalkers are medium creatures, that creature specifically being a native outsider with a base speed of 30 feet. Duskwalkers gain a +2 racial bonus on knowledge, religion, and heal checks, and have dark vision out to 60 feet. And they've got a couple of special abilities all their own. The first one is called Ghost Hunter. In a Duskwalker's hands, any weapon can strike true against spectral beings. A Duskwalker's non-magical weapons deal half damage to incorporeal creatures as if they were magic weapons, and their magic weapons can deal critical hits and precision damage, even if they do not have the Ghost Touch property. Once per day as a standard action, a Duskwalker can focus her natural revulsion towards undead. If she does so, she treats all weapons she wields as if they had the Ghost Touch property for 1 minute. Next up, we've got Ward against Corruption. Duskwalkers receive a +2 racial bonus on saving throws against negative energy and death effects, as well as the spell-like and supernatural abilities of Undead and Achilles. They are immune to all abilities that would transform their bodies or souls into undead, so it's not bad in certain settings where you're going to be fighting a lot of ghosts and you don't have magic weapons. A Duskwalker will get there. A +2 racial bonus on saving throws against things like paralysis from ghouls seems pretty strong as well, again, in certain settings only. Other than that, the race on flavor feels really good, but in practice seems really situational to me. If I were to play a Duskwalker, I'm definitely playing up the I've appeared out of nowhere and now this is my existence and I don't like the undead and I'm here to preserve the balance. That feels really good on flavor. But if I never fight any ghosts, if I never fight any undead or Achilles, it's kind of a moot point, right? So if you feel like playing a Duskwalker, certainly work with your GM, let them know, hey, this is the race that I'm trying to play, so, you're actually exposed to the thing you're good against. At least sometimes. We don't want to just hand it to them, GMs. Now that said, GMs, if they're playing Duskwalkers, the more I play tabletop role-playing games, the more I learn that sometimes you have to put the party up against what they're good against. So this is a very, very powerful, very simple reason to bring out the small army of ghost minis you've had gathering dust in whatever it is you store your minis in. Because the Duskwalker might be the only person in the party at low levels who can really respond to, suddenly a bunch of incorporeal creatures. Also, bringing in a Duskwalker brings the Boneyard and the Psychopomps into the campaign. And the Boneyard is a place that really you don't see a whole heck of a lot of in Pathfinder, except for like when you're dead. This might be a way to take the party just straight over to that place where the souls are judged and sent to their destined afterlife. On flavor, that feels pretty good and not a bad campaign idea either. Pharasma needs a group of mortals to go mete out her divine judgment across the multiverse. Who better to ask than the Duskwalkers? But what do you guys think about this race? Would you play a Duskwalker? Have you, maybe in the short amount of time that Planar Adventures has been released, maybe you've GM'd for one? And would you like to see the Duskwalkers in more detail in Pathfinder 2nd Edition? Hey, don't forget guys, if you like playing tabletop role-playing games, and I bet you do, we're giving away a copy of Fantasy Grounds Ultimate Edition right here on the channel. One copy is good enough for you and all your players. Follow this card right up here to be directed to the giveaway. Of course, remember, patronage at any tier gets you an additional entry in all of our giveaways. But that's all we have today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. The next episode of the Forgotten Race Review, where we cover another race from Planar Adventures, the Aphorite, drops next Monday.